Hi gang. Sunday school. We've been not meeting because of COVID issues, and I have been missing that. Sunday school is great. I love Sunday school. I love you guys. It's great. So we're going to do this little lesson. We'll try to do this by YouTube, and we'll try to run through these, keep you up to speed. You know, the first part of our year was talking about Genesis 1 through 11, and then that, creation and God's making Adam and Eve and the fall, sin, kicked out, Noah, all that kind of stuff. Genesis 1 through 11. And then in 12, Genesis 12 to 50, we were talking about Abraham. Abraham had a son named Isaac. Isaac had a son named Jacob. Jacob had, how many sons? He had 12. How many daughters? 1. 12 plus 1 makes what? 13. There you go. Yeah, very good. Okay. The one son was despised by the others because he had these dreams. One, he had dreams that these shocks, these stacks of crop were bowing down to him. And then another one, he had stars bowing down to him, plus the sun and the moon. Mom and dad were bowing down to him. While the other brothers, my goodness, plus he had a coat of many colors, and they hated him. They sold him to slavery. He winds up in Egypt. He winds up then being falsely accused. He winds up in jail. He interprets 2 dreams, the butler and the baker. Remember all that? And then the butler and the baker does, and the butler gets returned, and he forgets about him. Until the Pharaoh has a couple really weird dreams. You ever had a weird dream? Boy, they're hard to forget, aren't they? He has these fat cows being eaten by skinny cows, and then these fat ears of corn being eaten by skinny ears of corn. There were 7 of each. And what in the world's this about? Well, then the butler had a memory jog, and he said, I know somebody. So they bring Joe up, and Joe explains it all to him. And so the Pharaoh says, okay, I'm making you number 2. You organize all this while we have 7 years of plenty. You gather food. And he did that. He gathered up 1/5 of all the crops, and he had piles of corn and crops all ready. So when the famine came, they were ready to roll. Well, meanwhile, he's in Egypt. Meanwhile, up in Israel, not 100 miles away or 150 miles away, his folks are in trouble too. So finally, Jacob sends 10 brothers down. So Joseph plus 10 is 11. So who was missing? Ben. Remember Benjamin? So they go down to get food, and of course they mention Benjamin to him, and he keeps Simeon in prison there. Simeon's probably the ringleader of the ones that got him sold off into slavery. And he says, if you come back, you're bringing your younger brother. You're bringing Benjamin with you. No. So they go back, and they run out of food again, and Jacob says, we got to go get more food. And they say, remember, we got to bring Benjamin. And he says, no. My favorite wife, Rachel, had 2 boys. Joseph, and I lost him a long time ago. Wild beasts ate him. You brought back his coat of many colors with blood all over it, and I lost him. I can't lose Ben too. Well, eventually we're starving to death, so they send Ben down, and you remember the story. They're going back, and they put Pharaoh's cup in the top one of the sacks, and they get back. So he sends the army after him, brings them back, and finally he reveals who he is, and they move the whole family down there, and they live happily ever after. Okay. Well then. Now we've moved a long ways when we get to the book of Exodus, because now they're not living happily ever after. They're in their captivity. They're slaves. Yikes! And they've been that way for a long time. And a slave, you can't get out. I mean, they're stuck. There's no way. They don't have an army. They don't have anybody coming to rescue them. They're stuck. That's the way they're going to live the rest of their forever and ever. Their kids or grandkids or great-grandkids are just going to be slaves. They're stuck. So the book of Exodus is God sending in somebody to bring them out, and God breaks if everyone brings them out. You know the whole story. I mean, we're talking about the plagues, we're talking about the Red Sea, we're talking about Mount Sinai, all those kinds of things. So the third quarter of the first quarter is about creation, Genesis 1 through 11. The second quarter is about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs we call them. The third quarter, and that's why it's the first year, the third quarter, lesson 1. So we're talking about Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We're talking about the law of Moses. We're talking about the children of Israel leaving Egypt and being organized into a country and then moving over to the border, getting ready to go into the land. The fourth quarter will be Joshua. Remember, that's the story of crossing over Jericho and Ai and conquering the land and and all that. So the third quarter is about Moses leading the children of Israel out of Egypt and setting them up as a nation, as a country. So this quarter is about, primarily the focus is on Moses. The next quarter, the focus will start with Joshua. All right. So I think Jenny sent you a lesson, and here we go. I want to just walk through this lesson number 1. We'll try to keep these brief so you don't get bogged down, but we want to keep you also up to speed about what God is doing and what we would be learning if we were meeting together. So here's lesson number 1. It says Bible book number 1 was Genesis, which was about beginnings. It's the beginning of the world. 6 days God created the heaven and the earth. It's the beginning of man. God made man out of the dirt. God put man in Eden. Then out of the rib he made Eve. It's about sin. You know, Adam and Eve, they were told not to eat. They ate. God kicked them out. It's about nations. So from Adam and Eve came more and more people, and pretty soon you have nations. Remember, we had the Tower of Babel and all that kind of stuff. And then it's about one nation, the nation of Israel. So Genesis beginnings, beginning of the world, beginning of man, beginning of sin, beginning of nations, beginning of Israel. Genesis, starting something, beginnings, okay? Book number 2 is called Bible. What's Genesis? Exodus. There you go, Exodus. And it's about Israel exiting. Exodus, exiting. So your blank there is, the first blank is Exodus, E-X-O-D-U-S, is about Israel, E-X-I-T, exiting Egypt. Makes sense, doesn't it? The next book is going to be Leviticus, Numbers. Leviticus is about Levi's. Numbers is about counting the people. And Deuteronomy is a newspaper. It's about messages, sermons. Okay. So they were in Egypt. So where you see the pyramid there. Exodus 1:8 says, "Now there was a new king who did not know Joseph." 11 and 12. They set taskmasters over the Jews, over the descendants of Joseph and Jacob, to afflict them with burdens. And they built for Pharaoh's supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they grew. They were a dread. They were in dread of the children of Israel. They're going to be a big, big number. So they're slaves. So you have a pyramid there. The S word on that blank is slaves. And it says they were growing. All those dots, well, those are heads. They're all heads. You can add some more heads there. Oh my goodness, they just keep growing. There's more and more and more and more of them. All right. 122. And it says, "So Pharaoh commanded all these people, saying, every son who is born you shall cast in the Nile River. All baby boys must be thrown in the river." Well, if you're a baby, you can't swim, so you're going to drown. Well, yeah, you may not drown. You know, they don't have alligators over there. They have what? Crocodiles. Oh my goodness! So what are we doing? We're killing all the baby boys. They're afraid of God's people. That's somewhat true even today. The world is afraid of God's people. God's people have a faith, and they have a confidence, and they have a hope, and they have a power the world doesn't like. You and I, when we walk with Jesus, we got power. Well, we may be in jail and we may be persecuted, but there's a hope and a confidence in us that just rattles them. So they're trying to get rid of all the Jews. So that whole thing does, so they're trying to kill them. Well, you know the whole story here. So 2:1 says, "A man of the house of Levi went and took as a wife a daughter of Levi, and she conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. She could no longer hide him. She took an ark of bulrushes, dabbed it with asphalt, pitch, tar and stuff, put the child in it and put it in the reeds so the current can't take it. It's stuck in the reeds. She's got this little boat she made, and she puts this little baby in it." Who's the baby? It's Moses. Puts there, and then his sister Miriam, who's 7 years older, she stands off and watches. Well, the daughter of Pharaoh comes down to bathe and walk along the river, and she sees the little boat in the reeds, and she tells one of her servants, "Go get that. What is that? Bring that over here." And they bring it. Behold, a baby. The baby cried. So she had compassion. It's a Hebrew child. His sister then, Miriam, jumps up and says to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get a nurse for you to take care of this little boy, that she might take care of him until he's old enough that you can have him?" the Pharaoh's daughter said, "Oh, yes, go." So the little maiden, which is Miriam, goes to who? Goes to her own mom and gets Moses' mom and brings her and said, the Pharaoh's daughter says to her, "Take this child away and nurse him, and I will give you wages. I'm going to pay you to raise this boy." So the woman took the child and nursed him, and the child grew and brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and she became her son. So he called his name Moses, meaning I drew him out of the water. So here's your picture. You got a little house there. You got dad and mom. Your blanks are dad and mom. Miriam, Aaron, and a little baby there, who is Moses, right? Yep, okay. And then 3 through 6, yeah, you see Miriam there. That right underneath 3 through 6, you can put Miriam, because there she is, kind of hiding behind the bulrushes, and you see the little ark. And here comes the daughter of the Pharaoh with a servant. Oh, maybe there's another servant. I'm going to put another servant in. She probably has 2 or 3 maids helping her. And here she comes down to the river to bathe, and there's that ark, and in the ark is Moses, right? Okay, so Moses' mother rears him, probably 4 or 5, something like that, and then she gives him over to the Pharaoh's daughter. And of course, the Pharaoh's daughter, they get to go to school. They get to go to the best school in all the world. And not only does he get to go to school, elementary school, but high school, he gets to go to college. And he even gets to go to grad school. So he gets to go to the very best school, all that. So here he is. You see the picture of him there. He's got a diploma. He's got a mortar board. He's got a tassel. When you graduate, you take your tassel and you turn it from the right to the left, whatever. So he's graduating. So 2:10 says, she grew up under the Pharaoh's daughter, became her son. And so he now goes to the very best of schools. 2:11, and it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. So he looked this way and that way. He looked, okay, anybody watching? No. And he rose up, smacked the guy, and he killed him. And so then he hides him, sand. He kind of digs a little ditch, puts him in, covers him up. Okay, because nobody will see, right? Nobody knows he's going to hide this. And he went out the next day, verse 13, and 2 Hebrew men were fighting, and he said, "Stop it, why are you fighting each other?" And they said to him, "Who made you a ruler over us?" Now, they don't know. They don't know he's a Jew. They think he's Pharaoh's daughter. They think he's an Egyptian. They don't like him. They have no idea who he is. So verse 14, "Who made you a prince and judge? Do you intend to kill us like you killed the Egyptian?" Oh my goodness. It's out. They know. So Moses feared and said, "Surely it's known." When the Pharaoh heard this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and went all the way down into the bottom of Mount Sinai, the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. He has to run. Okay, let's see here. So age 40, you see there, he's killed this guy, and then he kills, and then he buries. So your 2 blanks, he kills and he buries. 2:14 there is the fact that these 2 guys are fighting. Who made you a judge over us? So they saw him. See, their heads are poking around the corner there, and they saw him kill this Egyptian. They saw him bury this Egyptian. And so Moses has to flee, and then some girls come to the well, and they take him home to their dad, and then he becomes a servant to the dad. And he herd sheep for 40 years. So 40 years he's in Egypt as a Pharaoh's daughter. Sorry, as a Pharaoh's son. He has the best food. He has the best chariot. He has the best education. He has the best clothes. He has the best of everything. He's got the biggest TV. He has got the newest iPhone. He has got the best of everything. Wow. And then he sinned. A big sin, but a sin, right? A big, bad sin. He kills somebody. For the next 40 years, he follows sheep around. He's out in the desert. He doesn't have a cell phone. He has no TV. He has no Pizza Hut. All that's gone. I mean, he just sits out on a rock and he plays a little, his little ukulele, and he watches sheep for year after year after year after year. For 40 years he watches sheep. 40 years of everything, 40 years of little. That's what sin will do. That's what sin will do. Well, one day, and you know the story, chapter 3, and Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. That's Mount Sinai, Horeb, the mountain of God. And an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire in the middle of a bush. So he looked, and the bush was burning with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, I got to turn and see what's going on. This sight, the bush does not burn up. Well, once in a while, the lightning will hit and the bush will catch fire, maybe just even combustion. But it's one thing for a bush to be on fire, but it's another thing for the bush not to burn up. So here you go. You got this bush burning, and the voice from the bush says, take your shoes off. Take your shoes off. This is holy ground. Oh my goodness. So you see him there. You see sandals off the side. He's on his knees in front of this burning bush. And God says, I want you to go be my voice and be my witness back to there. And Moses says, who am I? Who am I? Who, me? Just put who, me. Wait a minute. Stop. Bush. Who, me? Then he says, verse 13, 3:13, Moses said to God, when I come to the children of Israel, say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me, and they say, what's his name? What do I say? So he says, who? You want me to go back to the place they're trying to kill me, and they don't like me because they think I'm Pharaoh's son, but, you know, wait. And they're going to say, who sent you? And I says, who? So first one is who, me? Next one is says who? And then he said, well, why will they believe? 4:1. He said, Moses said, but suppose they will not believe my voice. Suppose they say, the Lord hasn't appeared to you. They're not going to believe. He says, why will they believe? And then finally he says in 4:10, I can't talk. All right. So when God calls us and when God tells us to do something, what do we do? When your folks tell you to do something, what do? You have all these excuses. Who, me? You mean my brother, right? You don't mean me. Who, me? Says who? Well, why do you think you can tell me to do that? Dad didn't say to do that. You said, tell it to your mom. And then, why will they believe? And then, I can't do this. I can't talk. Listen, God says, I can take care of all this. So here we go. Moses is being called into ministry. And here goes Moses. So we're going to follow and we're going to track through Moses in the book of Exodus as we know most of these stories, but we need to review because there's lessons to be learned even in review, aren't there? All right, very good. That's enough. Thank you, Father, for this start to this story of Moses and the Exodus out of Egypt. Thank you, God, that you teach us lessons in this. We're reminded, Lord, that sin has great consequences. We're reminded that you can save us out of impossible situations. We're reminded, Father, that you call us, and we too often we give excuses rather than just saying, here am I, send me. Help us all, Father, to be more obedient. In Jesus' name, amen, amen. All right, very good. Keep reading your Bible, keep studying, keep praying, keep looking to Jesus. God bless you. We'll catch you next round.